Laptops, you hate them, but guess what? They're not going anywhere. In fact, did you know more laptops sell per year than desktop by like a couple times fold? Anyway, today we're gonna be taking a look at some brand new refreshes to laptops for 2024. And this is the Origin EON16-X, which is like their big dog, top of the line, which is kind of ironic because it's gotten quite a bit smaller. It's like it went on a diet. Hey, Jay. Jay. Jay.
What?
We got work to do.
Yeah, I'm playing World of Warships. Yeah. World of Warships is the free-to-play naval strategy game where you command the most iconic and famous warships from World War I and World War II, recreated with stunning detail and accuracy. Build your fleet while participating in various game types while upgrading your ship's arsenal along the way. New players who sign up using my link below will receive an exclusive starter pack to get you up and running quickly by receiving 7 days premium time, 1 million credits, 300 doubloons, and the Tier 5 premium ship, the Exeter.
So what are you guys waiting for? Start sinking ships with World of Warships by heading to the description below and getting your freebies. So anyway, huge thank you to Origin PC for sponsoring today's video where we take a look at their new EON16-X gaming laptop. It's kind of fun. So the EON16 is not new. It's been around for a while, and by EON16 I mean the name. It's been revised and updated for many generations at this point now. But this one's pretty unique because of the fact that I feel like it's gone on a diet. Like it's gotten slimmer, it's gotten a little bit narrower. You can see the bezels are very thin around the outside. You can see the keyboard is nearly edge to edge. There's not a lot of wasted space on this. Now, let's talk about the breakdown of the name real quick. So EON is their line of laptops. 16 is the diagonal measurement of the monitor. So it's a 16-inch monitor, which I was always like 17-inch monitor or bust in the past for the longest time. But I've always felt like a 15-inch panel is just a little bit too crammed and the text is a little too small and stuff for my old eyes. But 16 seems to be like the perfect sweet spot because it's not as big of a laptop. Like you could fit this. This realistically is like the size of a 15-inch laptop back in the day. And it's only a little bit bigger if it were to be a 17-inch, but I think they also found that 16 inches is kind of like the perfect sweet spot there. In terms of its size, I mean, you can see, when we talk about the specs that are in this thing, it's pretty nuts if you look at the overall thickness on this. At the fattest part of the laptop, it's actually measuring in at 27.24 millimeters. So it's not the thinnest laptop on the market, but it's also not the fattest. They've gotten quite a bit smaller over time. And when I talk about the specs and what's in this, you'll understand why the size of it's actually pretty impressive. So we're gonna be opening it up and take a look at the heat pipe design because the specs on this are nearly identical to previous gen. The only difference is now we've got 14900 HXs in there. So 14900K would be a desktop. The 14900HX, HX designation means it's a laptop or a mobile solution CPU. It does have the same thread count. It does have the same core count. It has the same 8 P cores, 16 E cores, giving you 32 threads of performance. So you're getting full thread count of the desktop. It's just obviously in a laptop, you have much more limited power delivery options just because of the size of what they're able to fit in there. But it also has an RTX 4090 mobile in there. So the 4090 is obviously, this is not a full-size 4090. Not only is it not a full-size 4090 die, it also is limited to 175 watts of TDP, or TGP, which is total graphics power. So it's definitely chopped down, but even at that chopped down power limit and stuff, the previous generation, which had a 13900HX in there versus a 14, was loud. The fan profile was insane. And then it would still get up into like the 80s, like the CPU would hit like 95C easy, no problem at all. And then the GPU would get to its max limits immediately, not just power limits, but also thermals. So I've done some testing with this already off camera, getting ready for this video. And it's surprising how good it is in terms of the thermal. So I'm really curious to see what the inside looks like because this is also a smaller footprint than the previous laptop. So smaller and cooling better is really interesting. Like it's awesome, but it's interesting. I wanna know how they did it. I'm wondering if there's liquid metal. I'm not gonna take the heat pipes off just in case there might be, but I don't know if it's liquid metal or not, but it might be the type of solution they're using. And because liquid metal can't be, like, I don't have a need to reapply it, I don't want to take it off, have it be liquid metal, and then I'm screwed. So maybe what I'll do is I'll annotate right here, yes, it is liquid metal, or no, it's not, as we get a clarification on what the TIM material is, or the thermal interface material. Power-wise though, the power brick's also gotten quite a bit smaller. And if you're traveling with this, you're putting it in a backpack or something, the size of the brick is The size of the brick is huge in terms of its importance. This is a 280 watt brick. It's even smaller than previous bricks because our previous bricks for the 4090 laptops were 330 watts. So it's really weird to see that we're getting away now with smaller bricks and smaller output. Now the manufacturer of this one is Dongguan Ohai Technology. Now it is a GAN or GAN or gallium nitride type of brick. So that's one of the reasons why they're able to make it smaller. They're solid, smaller capacitors that allows the overall size of the brick to be able to be smaller. Like there's times where I've had laptops come in here with 2 bricks that are bigger than this to power it. And this would absolutely run circles around those laptops. So things have improved when it comes to power delivery and such. So in fact, this is 280 watts gallium nitride. This is a Chickeny 230 watt. So there's 50 more watts in this guy. And it's actually a little bit thinner, but slightly longer, but slightly narrower. The point is, it didn't have to get bigger to give more power. It actually got a little bit overall smaller. And the weight is comparable too. It's not like it's any heavier. We were looking for one of our 330 bricks, but I think it's one of our other guys has that laptop. So this is the biggest we had in-house. But that's Chickeny, which is most laptops tend to go with that. So obviously they're using this brand because they're offering the GAN or gallium nitride power brick, which is nice. All right, so regarding memory, it's got 32 gigabytes of DDR5. It's running at 4,800 megahertz, so nothing crazy there. Obviously, it's 2 sticks of RAM. I'm curious if there's only 2 slots or if we can expand on that. With the RTX 4090 mobile, it also obviously has Intel graphics as well. So it has a feature called Advanced Optimus, which means that the Windows environment and the driver can just switch between the iGPU and the discrete GPU, in this case the 4090, with the system still booted. Back in the day before this, it's called a DDS, the switch. Before the DDS existed, you had to like say, okay, I want to use the Intel graphics or the Iris or whatever it was called back in the day, and then reboot the laptop, and then it can only run that. And if you want to play a game, you had to reboot the laptop again to be able to have your discrete going, and you had to manually switch it. So that it's the Advanced Optimus, it's a DDS switch that does it all internally now. Not really news, it's been around for a long time, but it's important to note. So the screen is a 240 hertz IPS, 2560 by 1600, 16 by 10 aspect ratio. So you're getting a little bit extra vertical height. Instead of 1440, it's 1600, which is kind of common these days. I think that's because just the form factor of the laptop made sense for them to be a little bit taller, a little bit closer to square rather than a wider rectangle for like widescreen viewing, because technically 16 by 9 is considered widescreen. 4x3 was considered standard, so this is obviously in the middle of that. But it's a 16 by 10, which means a little bit extra pixel count versus 2560 by 1440 for the GPU to deal with, but no extra pixel density. It's the same density, it's just we added more to the top. We didn't stretch it, we just added pixels there. Not too many, but they're there. This particular laptop obviously features zone control for RGB. There's a bunch of different modes and stuff that you can select from. I just have it set to like the static kind of a light blue color because that's what I find is pleasing on the eye when it comes to looking at this screen, but it does have RGB modes and all that, and it's even got a little downfire RGB strip right here, which is not currently on, but there is a lit strip right there. There's no lighting on the back and the vents or any of that because of the fact that they kind of want to bridge the gap, and Origin's been kind of going this route for a while now, where they want to bridge the gap between gamer and professional and really allow one laptop to work perfectly in both environments. Nothing's more embarrassing than showing up with a bright RGB gaming laptop in a very high profile, sensitive environment. But when it comes to power profiles and stuff too, you have this turbo button right here, or profile button. This is a hotkey switcher between the different profiles. It's nothing new, but it is a feature obviously that exists on this laptop. So you can go in and actually customize profiles, or you can use their existing ones between like office mode, which is more quiet. Like right now, the fans on this thing are like there's no fan noise at all, and the temperatures are perfectly fine. Obviously turbo mode, which will just take, the computer will kind of like assess what it's doing. Are we gaming? Oh, okay, cool. Let's ramp up the fans. Let's ramp up the clocks a little bit. Oh, if we're doing like media consumption, it can stay on the like internal graphics rather than the discrete graphics and give you better battery life, give you better thermals, better acoustics. That way you're not running the fans. And you can go in and customize when those turn on and such. Other than that, there's no bloatware on it, which is amazing because laptop companies love to throw as much bloatware as they can on there, like McAfee and or Norton or...
How many fucking control panels do you need?
One thing I like to see though, and this isn't the first time they've done it, but I like to see that they're continuing it, is they actually have a privacy cap, if you will, for the webcam. So a lot of people don't like their webcam, because it's facing them, right? They don't like the webcam on. You never know with these, I mean, have you ever just been talking with someone and suddenly you're getting ads about things you've been talking about? Because we all know our smart devices are listening all the time. So How do we know the webcams aren't watching all the time? So it's nice to at least be able to block the webcam off. That way you know there's privacy, no one's peeking through your webcam. That's why they exist, because enough people have expressed concern about a laptop webcam that's always visible and exposed to be able to close that off. And I think that red, right? Yeah, the red means it's closed, and then you slide open the little cover and then the webcam's active. So when it comes to the webcam, here I am doing a video on it directly. You can see the auto exposure is kind of hunting right now. I've got some bright lights going on behind me. It does have face tracking for exposure, so it recognizes there's a person right now. See, it just got brighter again. But it recognizes I'm here. It turned my hair completely white. I don't like, stop going brighter. I don't know why it's adjusting like it is, but it's doing what it's doing. That made my hair completely white. My hair's not white, it's gray, okay? Anyway, I have no idea how the audio sounds. It probably sounds terrible. Most built-in audio on laptops is terrible. We also need to do like a typing test here real quick to see what it sounds like when clicking and typing on it. Okay, so that was me clicking around a little bit. Here is the typing test. Actually, it's not that terrible. Like, it's definitely usable for like Zoom and stuff like that. I think most people would still prefer to probably use a headset and mic for privacy reasons. However, in a pinch, this would actually work, and the video doesn't look terrible. My only issue with the webcam is the fact that it's constantly exposure hunting. So before we get into gaming performance, and the reason why I have this rag is unfortunately the matte black is a bit of a fingerprint magnet. Now, it's not too bad because I've been like trying not to touch it. We have this rag on hand at all times. So I should have just left the plastic on. But anyway, if you have oily skin, it's gonna get gross. But that kind of goes with the territory of just about any laptop. But I can't wait for the day of like nano coating technology that exists on everything, so it just resists oils. It's like trying to have a smartphone where the screen doesn't get dirty. The laptop's going to get grungy no matter what. All right, battery life. First of all, you can't really game on it on the battery because of the fact that the power limit alone and the power demand for the 4090 and the 14900HX is going to pretty much exceed the kind of output that the battery can give you. So you're gonna get locked to like 30 FPS in anything, if it even pushes 30 FPS, depending on the title that you're running. The battery will probably be exhausted in under an hour, and it won't be a good experience. But let's talk about like content consumption. So we charge the battery to 100%. It's an 80 watt hour battery, by the way. And I think because of the footprint and the size of the laptop, 80 watt hours is, I'm hoping there's no dead space around it, because if there is, then that's lost watt hours that should be available. Every battery will be under 100 watt hours because that's an FAA flight requirement when it comes, at least in the US. Probably I think most of the world's probably adopted that by now. Anything over 99 is not able to be brought onto an airplane. So 99.99, you'll see those exist. But anything less than that means battery life is a trade-off. So the smaller footprint and the thinner laptop means smaller battery access. So as long as there's no dead space around it, they did not waste any potential watt hours available to it. So at 1080p, full screen YouTube video running at 50% brightness, with the audio off, by the way, with the RGB on, so the keyboard was illuminated, I did not turn that off. We saw, in 1 hour, we used 29% of the battery. It was at 71% on the battery, which gives us just about 3.5 or just over 3.5 hours of media consumption time on the battery. It would actually be greater than that because this laptop does automatically, and Windows does this, at 20% go into a battery saver mode. So it would put the battery or the brightness down even more, and then it would start reducing the core clocks and such to keep the battery as active as long as possible, under 20%. So if it were able to continue at that full power available to it on battery load anyway, you'd get 3.5 hours. You'd probably easily get closer to 4.5 hours once those battery saver modes kick in for the last 20%. If you're worried about battery life too, though, you can go in and up that to say like at 30%, go more aggressive on the battery consumption stuff. And that was also at the balance profile. I want to point that out. It was at balance profile for Windows battery optimization settings and power settings, as well as it was still on the turbo profile for the Origin control panel, but that should have no effect on the playback because turbo only affects the way the GPU responds to gaming loads and when the iGPU and discrete GPU are switching off their loads for gaming. Not great, not the worst we've seen, typical Windows laptop experience. Okay, so before we get to gaming, let's go ahead and talk about some CPU type of performance. So I really want to see what our temperatures and our throttling and stuff look like. So this laptop will boost up to 5.6 gigahertz single core if And you can see right here, most of the P cores have at some point hit single core. So we're getting pretty close to our desktop. Actually, we are getting our desktop boost clocks on a single core. I won't hold it very long because of the power requirement for the laptop. However, let's just see what our temps and clocks do right now under a very high AVX instruction set. So it's at 4 gigs all core at the moment. Wow, the package is at 81, 82, and it's flat right now. And I have it lifted up to try and get more airflow to the bottom. E cores are at high 70s, P cores are in the low 80s. And it dropped down to 3.9 gigahertz all core right there. Oh, back to 4. And that was a 29,039. So it's realistically landing about where a 14700K does. To be honest, 29,000, 30,000 range, that's like 700K here. So 13,700K, 14,700K. That's pretty impressive actually. And mostly the reason why I did that was just because of the fact that it's a whole gigahertz slower than what you would typically get on those CPUs at all core. Actually, it's about 1300 megahertz slower. So it's actually picking up a lot of slack. But what we want to see right now is our gaming loads. One thing to note about MSI though, you don't want to leave it running on a laptop that has advanced Optimus, because what'll happen is, if you can see right here, it says GeForce RTX 4090 laptop. But if I click the up arrow, you can see there's also the built-in laptop, the UHD. So for it to give us any sort of telemetry on those cards, it has to ping them and say, hey, what are you doing? So the 4090, every 1 second is gonna get woken up and told like, huh? It's like, nothing. So that would definitely eat into your battery life if you're concerned about that. So don't leave MSI Afterburner running on a laptop if you have Advanced Optimus. The other test on laptops is speakers. And this is actually doing, it's fully turned up right now, but it's actually clear. It feels as full as something that's this thin could give you. It's got 2 down-firing speakers right here in the front. You can see the speaker grills right there. You can also see that in gaming mode, it lights up this strip right here. So we know now that the iGPU, or the discrete GPU, is active, but it's actually pretty good sounding. Well, I guess we can go with what it tried to do initially based on scanning the hardware. Ray Tracing Ultra, DLSS Super Resolution. We're gonna go to balance, DLSS Sharpness, Ray Trace, no reconstruction. Frame Gen? Sure, why not? It's available to us. We're not doing a Twitch shooter type game where we need immediate reaction time, because this does add a little bit of latency. Resolution, obviously here is 2560 by 1600, and I want full screen. So our GPU, our 4090 is running at 2340 megahertz on a laptop. That's actually pretty insane. And look at these temperatures right here. 77C, 98% used. It was at 96 for a second there. 146 FPS right now. The CPU is gonna get warm. There's no way to stop that. And let me explain why real quick too. I'm fairly confident that this is a shared heat pipe. So that means heat from one component will affect another component. And as you can see, there is still some load on the CPU. So this is just an inherent design of laptops where heat from one component will affect another. These are designed to run 100C. And at 100C, it will do whatever changes it needs to make to stay under that. And as us desktop gaming enthusiasts, 90C is unacceptable, but it is absolutely a part of life with the laptop. But if you look at the frame rate right here, it is absolutely smooth. It is not fluctuating a whole lot either. Now, one of the things that can be uncomfortable with gaming laptops is heat soak through the case right here. So where the palms go, it doesn't feel any warmer than where room temp would be. The keyboard though, however, is not a sealed device. Heat does come through it. In fact, in the center part of the keyboard, it's fairly warm. However, above the WASD keys, it's significantly cooler. And if we look at the thermal camera, you can see that. Now that's probably gonna coincide with where the fans are. There's 2 fans on the bottom bringing air in. So I'm assuming that's gonna be where the fans are, but you can see right here in the center part of the keyboard, it's definitely warmer and it's noticeable when you put your hand. And then on the bottom, we take a look at it, you can actually see the entire heat pipe design. You can see where they carry it off to the sides to exhaust out the side and the back. But there's some, like the hottest point on the back right here is like 65.8 C. And then you can see where the fans are obviously, which coincide with the colder spots on the keyboard. So one thing I did not do right now during any of this, and I want you to notice, look, the temps were down in the 80s, there's 87. That's because of the fact that we still miss the days when laptops had foldable feet that came out to prop them up for better airflow. Because I guarantee right now, if I take my iFixit kit and I prop the back of this laptop up, we'll see some thermal improvement. So it's been sitting here for a while now. I've been letting it pull the temps down. It pulled the GPU down about 5C from like 83 down to 78, and the CPU all the way down to as low as 83, but really the median temp's more like 84. So it's going between 83 and 85. Just by lifting up the laptop, and not only that, the air is significantly cooler too versus what was initially coming out. This is the kind of laptop that definitely having a cooling pad underneath it would be beneficial to get as much fresh air to it as possible. I wish the manufacturers would have flip out feet again just to allow more airflow. All I did was just put my iFixit back there. But the FPS though is nuts. Even at those high temps, it's just, for me, having lower temps is better because that's just, I personally don't like seeing things near the limit in terms of temperature. So path tracing replaces all solutions for light and uses only ray trace lighting effects. It's still 100 FPS with fully path traced. Now, of course, we are DLSS in balance still, and we do have ray reconstruction on right now, but we're getting 90 FPS in this laptop right now. I've built desktops when this game came out, and then the path trace stuff started, that could not comfortably run fully path traced. It's so pretty. Oh, oops, I was distracted driving. Look at the ground. So one last thing before we open it up, let's do a Port Royal run just so that we can see where it lands compared to desktop GPUs. It's the easiest way to say, hey, here's a score, which is comparable to another score. We can see what desktop GPU that lands at. So we got a 14,061 in Port Royal. Interestingly enough, it's an 8103 die. It's got 9728 CUDA cores, 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 non-X memory. Essentially, it's a 4080 desktop. The only thing that's holding it back from reaching the score, the 18,010, which our 4080 desktop Founders Edition got, is its power limit at 175, where this is like a 320 watt, I believe, 320 watt TDP. So, and I can't remember if this is 6X memory. I believe this is 6X memory. So a little bit slower on the RAM, and then obviously a little bit lower on the core clock, because that'll reach like 2800, 2785, somewhere around there. And then obviously it's got the lower power limit available to it. So it's still pretty impressive though, considering this would still beat that SLI D-frame system we just did our old school kind of a review on. One thing I want to point out too regarding the cooling, you can see here how there's a ridge that comes up where the fans are, which cuts into the space you have to cool it even more. So only the height of the feet right here, because you can see the front feet are very shallow. You're only getting about 5 millimeters of gap between the back here fans and the intake. So that's why when we lifted it up, we saw a significant improvement regarding temperatures. All right, so I used my iFixit lid to sort of keep track of where the screws were, like these were the sides, but all these ones around the fan are the same long screws, and then the front right here is all the same short screws. So it's not like they use different links everywhere, so that's kind of nice. There we go. I wonder what the watt hours are, Phil. Okay, here we go. So in terms of RAM, it is Vengeance RAM, makes perfect sense because Origin is a Corsair company. Only 2 DIMMs though, and 2 slots. So if we wanted to increase our RAM capacity, we have to replace our DIMMs themselves. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 heat pipes. And this is why you could see this actual shape when I looked at the thermal underneath. It's awesome to see that. So this is why I said some of the air goes out here, some of the air goes out there. And that's why when I lifted it up, the airflow increased because the fan was able to pull in more air. I initially thought a screw was missing right there, but I just realized the case screw goes down through that hole right there because there's only 2 screws on this. Ta-da! So there's our 990 Pro. It does have a little bit of a thermal pad on there. Like it doesn't, the only thing that really needs to be thermally cooled, to be honest, is the controller. The NAND is fine. And this does touch the controller, because as you flip it around, you can see the thermal pad does touch that right there. So here we have access to another M.2 drive right there if we want to add one. No SATA drive support or anything in this. That's what we get, 2 drives and 2 DIMM slots. It looks like it would actually be pretty easy to work on though, if we needed to, like, for some reason, pull the heatsink or something off. I'm not going to do that, like I said. I don't know if it's liquid metal. I don't have a way of reapplying through liquid metal. I don't have any, so I don't want to downgrade it by replacing it with thermal paste. So regarding I/O, it's kind of interesting. We have a full-size SD card reader in here. 2 USB 3.0 on the right. On the back, we have our vents. We have a USB-C. Because it's Intel, it's probably a Thunderbolt port. Full-size HDMI, full-size LAN, and our barrel connector. And then on the opposite side, we have a combo headphone jack, a USB 3, and another USB-C. So a lot of connectivity on this. So the EON16-X, This is by far the fastest laptop we've had come into the studio yet, and that technically happens every time there's a new generation of stuff. It's interesting though, because 14th gen and 13th gen are essentially the same, but something magic happened, and FPS came out and temperatures were significantly better than the previous gen, even prior to lifting it up and getting better airflow. A couple of things that are notable is the build quality is insanely rigid. There's no creaking or cracking. That's my hands making noise. It's all metal construction, so there's no plastic on here. It's not gonna flex and creak and make all kinds of gross noise. The keyboard, although it is a membrane, it's very consistent. It's pretty easy to type on. It's a slightly domed key, so that makes it kind of easy to index and tell where your fingers are. The trackpad is very smooth. I do wish that, so again, with many Windows/Intel based laptops, the trackpad sort of hinges up here at the top, where when you push down, the whole thing has to like hinge like that. So it means sometimes you gotta push harder than you really think you need to make a touch register. I also wish that the left button, like sometimes I found myself more clicking in the middle, but it wasn't registering as either button, technically. Like I would click it and like, I didn't get a right click menu or options pop up, and I didn't get a left click either. It's like somehow I was pushing both apparently, and they just canceled each other out. So I wish a little bit more defined, like left, right click would be, and the size of the trackpad, that's my fault. I just wasn't indexing over far enough when I go to click with my thumb. But I mean, trackpads are very subjective. Some people never use them, always carry a mouse with them, or you're like me and I use them all the time and I screw them up and don't click very well. We just wish the buttons were like more, like the way it hinges made more sense that the whole trackpad would move down rather than having it hinge at the top. Other thing, it does have a numpad, but it's very narrow. So if you have a lot of 10 key skills and you're used to 10 keying, you're probably gonna mess up a lot on this because it's very narrow versus a standard 10 key size. The hinge on the monitor, very, very solid. So you can see I really have to, oh, it's a lay flat. I hadn't even tested that yet. So, and the hinge is pretty strong, so it's gonna hit the ground before the hinge breaks. But it's also tough. Look, it's lifting up the front of the laptop a little bit when I do that. So that's nice. The laptops that stop like right here, anyone out there have kids and ever been sitting there typing on their laptop on a table or whatever, and the kid comes up and is like, hey dad. I've had mine do that. I've also had mine, my old HP when I worked for the software development company I used to work for, go and literally have the hinges break off, and then yeah, anyway. So like flat hinges are nice. Anyway. The hinge is nice and rigid though, so it's not like it's flopping all, like I can pick it up, handle it, move it, you know, hold it horizontal and it's not falling down. So that's nice to see. All right, I know many of you are like, oh, laptops suck, they're overpriced and stuff. It takes a lot of R&D to create something this small to give you as close to the performance of a desktop as you possibly can. Laptops these days are kind of a dead term. They're really more or less considered mobile PCs at this point. Like they're getting more and more powerful. And if you take something today that shrunk down and compare it to anything even 5 years ago desktop-wise, it's more than likely gonna be faster than anything that came out 5 years ago. That's crazy to think about that. Unfortunately, with that though, does come with a pretty hefty price tag. So this laptop, I don't have the exact price on it, but I can tell you the exact same spec on it with an additional 1 terabyte NVMe, clocks in at a little over $3,700. So it really has to be something you want to justify that sort of price. Fortunately, right now, though, Origin does have right now in July, I'll put a link down in the description, where you can get 15% off laptops. So that's important. And there's also some other coupon codes and stuff down there you guys can use to save some more money. Laptops are typically an investment, and it's typically something people hang on to for quite a while. And they're a necessary evil, if you will. So many desktop enthusiasts just they have an unhealthy hatred towards laptops, even though they don't use them, so why care if you don't use them? But more laptops sell than desktop PCs, hand over fist in the United States, and probably the rest of the world as well. And the manufacturers in the industry knows that. Intel knows that. NVIDIA knows that. So here they are, and they're not going anywhere. So if you're the kind of person that's looking for a powerful laptop that's literally like no compromises, you want as much performance as you can possibly get, the EON16 is definitely a good choice to take a look at and kind of discern from there if it's worth it to you. So one thing I forgot to mention too is this one doesn't have it. I requested this one not have it, but you can get the UV printing on the back with custom imagery and stuff that's all selectable on their website to make it more unique and like kind of personalized to you, and that's a nice touch to have. This one I opted not to have it so people can see what you have, what you get if you don't have the UV printing covering up the Origin logo. All right guys, thanks for watching. Sound off down below. Is it a stud or is it a dud? It's very subjective at this point for laptops. All right guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.